I recently had the pleasure of speaking to a group of artists about how to create a thriving community that will help you get and keep more customers. It was so well received that I knew I had to share it with you all. So, I'm going to be talking about my Community Cultivated Framework, which, if you've been listening since we started way back in 2022, it was the first 4 episodes of this podcast. So, I figured it's about time that we revisit it. But I wanted you to know that you're going to hear this from the perspective of talking to an artist. So you're going to have to open your mind a little bit and ask yourself the question of how could I apply this to my business? Because the examples I give are going to be for artists. But the 4 key principles in my Community Cultivated Framework apply to any community, whether it's online or offline. So sit back and relax and enjoy this episode. It's going to be a bit of a longer one, but I promise you it's worth it to listen to the whole thing. You've got the talent, you've got the skills, you've got the supplies, maybe you've got the classes or you have the membership at the course already, but you're looking for real growth or you wouldn't be here. You want retention, people coming back for more, repeat customers, recurring sales. You want referrals. You want better conversions. I promise you, all of this starts with one thing: having a thriving community. I think about the AI age that we're in, and I'm sure you think about it, and I see AI trying to duplicate brushstrokes and recreate art and photography. And I see all this free content out there. It's been out for decades, right? On YouTube and other social media sites. But one thing an algorithm can't replace is human connection. So if you want to stand out as a business in this day of AI, more content isn't going to do it. What's going to do it is having a thriving community that nobody else can replicate. My name is Shana, and I have been in this space for over a decade. I've worked with industry leaders that you may know: Allie Kay from Fresh Paint, Amy Forterfield, Christelle and Stephanie from Creative Crafting Club, Heidi Easley with her Paint Party membership, Shelly Brander with her Knit Stars, Stu McLaren, and so many others to help them create thriving communities that keep their members coming back for more. We're talking about programs that retain thousands and some even tens of thousands of members through the power of community. And today I'm going to teach you the same 4-part community cultivated framework that I use to help these businesses create thriving communities without burning themselves out. These are timeless strategies. They work whether your business is online, in person, or both. And I promise you this framework, it works. I've had clients use this to increase their challenge conversions to over 40%. Some clients have used this and their retention has gone up so much that their customer lifetime value boosted by 48% without increasing prices or selling additional products. We've helped clients increase retention from 80% to mid-90s. It works for communities of 14 to 14,000. I've seen it work in so many different situations, so I know if you apply it, it's going to work for you. But before we get started, I want to get on the same page with you. I want to get clear about what this isn't. And it's not a Facebook group. I'm not a Facebook group consultant. I'm not going to talk to you about Facebook group strategy. Community is not a Facebook group. And I hopefully right now, I just hope you're breathing a sigh of relief when I say that. Community is really the entire ecosystem around your business. It's how your brand interacts with people and how your people interact with each other. It's not a posting schedule. It's not a plug and play system either. I'm not going to give you some magic formula that's going to help your community connect. What I am going to give you, though, is a proven strategy that you can use no matter what kind of business you have. It's something that will hold true for your business for years and even decades to come. And it's going to be something that you can build on in every aspect of your business, whether we're talking about marketing, retention, or even operations and team satisfaction. So we're going to walk through this framework in a really casual way. If you want to follow along, if you're somebody who likes to doodle on your iPad while you're taking notes, if you want to print something out, I have it for you. Have this right here. It's my Community Cultivated Guide. So if you just go to ccframework.com, ccframework.com, you can download this guide. You don't have to put in your email address or anything like that. It's just for those of you that want to follow along more easily, you're able to do that. Okay, we're going to dive in, and I'm so excited because I know many of you are going to grasp this community concept in incredible ways. And many of you already have communities and you want to build community, but you just aren't quite sure how. So, this is going to break down exactly how to do it. And I promise you're not going to leave here with this strategy done. This is something that's going to take some time for you to sit with, but we are going to make some progress while we're here together. So, the first pillar of a thriving community is cause. Cause. So, what is cause? Well, basically, we need more than a shared interest, right? A shared interest in painting isn't enough to create a community, even a shared interest in a certain kind of painting, like watercolors. We need a shared outcome, a shared purpose, if you will, a shared purpose. And this shared purpose is what helps us to create belonging. It's almost like the flag that you wave that says, come here if you want to go this way, get this kind of outcome, live this kind of life, achieve these kind of things. We are the people you want to hang out with. I'm the person that you want to help you, to guide you, to lead you. And so, to give you kind of an idea of how to think through this purpose, I'm going to give you some examples to just kind of get your creative juices flowing a little bit, okay? So, we create watercolor journals to rediscover ourselves. We stitch to preserve heritage and pass it on. We paint together to heal broken wounds. We help moms carve out creative time through acrylic painting. We restore mental health through daily watercolor journaling. We host paint nights to reconnect and find our joy. We're reviving the lost art of hand embroidery with modern community. We're giving women the confidence to sell their art at local markets. Having this clear purpose is how we connect people to something greater than themselves, which we all have a deep desire for in the end, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So we have this desire to be connected to something greater than ourselves, but then we get connected and invitations to connect based on interest. But when we can give people a bigger purpose and get really clear on our purpose, how do I want to use my art? How do I want to use my skills, my talents? How do I want to use this gift that I've been given in the world to serve people or to help empower people or to help them create more income? Whatever it is, there is no wrong answer here. But what I want you to do is to make sure that you are specific in your answer, that you are bold in your answer, and that you keep sharing that vision over and over again in your marketing and in your community. We paint or we do X so that what becomes possible. And purpose is just a small part of this. It's a very important part, but there's two other aspects to cause as well. If we have people coming looking for this outcome, this clear purpose, then we need to make sure we have a path to be able to get them there, a path. So do I know, am I figuring out, can I help guide people on a path to get them to that outcome, to that purpose? If somebody wants to fulfill this purpose and that's why they come to me, I better give them a path. If when they want to reach the top of the mountain or the end of the trail, I'm going to put a path through the woods for them. And then secondly, if we have this path, how are we supporting them in making progress along the path? You know, a lot of people think in community that engagement is the goal. Engagement is not the goal. In fact, sometimes engagement can actually hinder the goal, which is progress. Progress towards that purpose, towards that cause, that's the goal. That's what we're looking for. So let me ask you this. What's the outcome that your community makes possible? What's the first thing that comes to mind for you? The thing that made you create this business or start creating or start teaching in the first place that you just kind of keep tucked away. What is that? And maybe even think about it as what's the change that your members are currently experiencing? If you already have community members, what are they experiencing? What changes are they experiencing through your community? Because the reality is that our communities, they're not about paint or yarn. They're about growth. They're about healing. They're about reconnection. They're about joy and purpose and freedom. I want you to get clear on what those things are for you and your community. And I want you to say it often. I want you to reinforce it with stories, with community member wins, making sure that your team's aligned around this purpose as well. To our pillars, and the second pillar is culture. Culture. And I'm sure when you first hear the word culture, there's some things that may immediately come to mind for you. The culture is everywhere. I think about the difference of culture that you might experience if you are at a NFL game or if you're at a New York art gallery. You might experience a little bit of a different culture. And every community has a culture to it, whether you are intentionally creating it or not. I love the way Seth Godin, who's a famous marketer, the way he puts it is people like us do things like this. People like us do things like this. You have a culture. You just may not be shaping it intentionally. And culture is what tells someone, I belong here. Or maybe I don't belong here. Culture is how your community behaves when you're not in the room. And when done well, culture is your X factor. Culture is the thing that makes you not worry about competition and makes you not care about the other person who is teaching the specific style that is the exact same as yours and has the same outcome that it's promising people because you know you do it differently and your community is a unique place for a certain kind of person. So you want to get really clear on how to create culture. Now, how do you do that? I mean, who teaches people how to create culture? We are taught how to identify it, but not how to create it. So I'm going to give you a little help here when you're talking about creating your culture. It's going to start with beliefs. Beliefs. And I like to think about this in a few different ways, but what do I believe to be true about the world? I'm just going to start writing down all the things that I believe to be true about the world. And then I'm going to get a little bit more narrow. Like, what do I believe to be true about our industry, the industry right now overall? Then what do I believe to be true about my particular niche within the industry? Maybe it's photography. Maybe it's underwater basket weaving. I don't know. I don't know what your niche is, but what do I believe to be true about that particular industry? And then what do I believe to be true about the people I serve and the community I'm creating? Or even more importantly, what do I want them to believe about themselves? What do I want them to believe about the industry? What do I want them to believe is possible for them? Take some time, write down all of those beliefs about the world, the industry, about your community, about what's possible for them. And then we're going to take it even further and we're going to turn those beliefs into behaviors. So if we are a people who believe these things, then of course you'll narrow it down to the things that are most relevant to the community you're trying to build. But once we have those beliefs, those core beliefs for this community, then if we're a people who believe these things, what behaviors do we then expect? What behaviors do we then expect of our community? Maybe you have this belief that the first draft is just as important as the final product. And so your group has this behavior, this norm of posting their ugly first draft. Maybe you have this belief that celebration should be sought after in any way possible because it's so easy to be discouraged. So we celebrate every little thing we can. So when somebody sells their first piece of art or when somebody finishes their first painting or drawing or sketch or takes their first photo, like all of that gets celebrated. So you have this community of celebration. Maybe you believe that sewing or knitting or cross-stitching is therapy. And so you have this whole community around thread therapy, and people talk about how the act of cross-stitching or knitting or whatever it might be is actually helping them heal. Maybe we have this belief about paint over perfection or progress over polish, and we create this culture where we do it anyway, we share it anyway. where we focus on the progress that we're making instead of maybe the polish, the final thing at the end and getting it perfect. Maybe we have this culture around critiquing, right? This culture where we ask before we critique, where we lift somebody up before we critique, or where we don't critique unless we're invited to. Maybe we believe that rest is part of the process. So we make sure that people in our community are sharing their vacations and sharing when they take a break and sharing when they're not growing their business. They're sharing the things that they're doing to fill their own cup. I don't know what it is for you, but I promise you, if you get really clear on those beliefs, the behaviors are going to flow out of that. And the other thing that's going to flow out of that are boundaries. And I know this is so hard. How many of you are good at upholding boundaries? I mean, if you're an Enneagram 8 like me, you might be like, yes, give me some boundaries. I will uphold them for sure. That's me. But then a lot of people struggle with this. A lot of people struggle with boundaries. And we're going to talk later in one of the other pillars about how important it is to uphold these boundaries. We're going to have this moment where I'm going to circle back around to this. Okay, so stay with me for it. But boundaries are really important because if there are certain behaviors that we want, then there are definitely certain behaviors that we do not want inside of our community. And we need to draw those boundaries. In fact, research shows us that people thrive in boundaries. We are a people who need boundaries. We thrive in boundaries. So you're actually doing your community a service to have these boundaries. And as you define these things, these beliefs, these behaviors, and boundaries, and you start to intentionally shape your culture, I want to make sure that it doesn't just happen within this private or paid community. It needs to be happening and be talked about and be seen and be felt in your marketing as well. Because discontentment comes when expectations don't meet reality. So we want to make sure that we are attracting the right people by displaying the right culture that they're going to experience once they get deeper into our world, so that we can set those expectations before they buy and make sure that we're constantly reinforcing them as they enter into our world at a deeper level. So, got a little prompt for you, a little challenge for you, okay? I want you to think again about, what do you believe to be true about your world, about your industry, about your niche within your industry, about your community, about what's possible for them, what behaviors reflect that, and what boundaries protect it. You are already creating it. In fact, as I'm talking through this, you're probably having all of these things come up if you run a community now where you're like, oh, yeah, that's definitely that. That's definitely a boundary. I didn't know I had that, but I've been upset about that before. That's felt uncomfortable before. Oh, that's definitely a behavior that we do. That's a thing that we celebrate inside of our community, which is tied to this core belief, right? Intentionally or not, you're creating it. So you see these seeds, these little sprouts popping up in your community. You just have to decide which of those you're going to water and nurture and which of those you're going to uproot like weeds. I want you to share, what's one belief that you would instill in your community members today if you could? What's one belief? If you could take every person in your sphere of influence in this business of yours or this future business of yours, what is one belief that you wish you could just snap a finger and plant in their head to help them see what's possible for themselves or achieve this outcome or have this kind of experience? What is that one belief? I can't wait for you to really dive into this culture piece, because I promise you, you're going to have so many light bulbs come up and you're going to realize, like, you're already doing this. You're already doing this. You just need to get a little bit more intentional about it. All right. The third pillar that we have here is communication. Communication. Communication is so important. You don't understand that until you understand the three different types of communication, because here's the problem. We focus so much on outgoing communication, on the broadcast, just broadcasting to people all the time. Like, oh, I've got new art for sale. I'm working on this new thing. Come join my membership. Come buy my new pottery collection. Show up at the gallery today. Like, here's all the things. Got a new podcast episode, a new how-to video on YouTube. I'm just constantly telling people outgoing. And these are not bad things. In fact, You're probably going to learn over the next couple of days, you're going to be learning more ways to send outgoing communication. And it's necessary. It's necessary. It's one of the three types of communication, outgoing. But what about the other two types of communication? Well, most communities talk at people all the time. And most businesses, they're over relying on the outgoing message. But I promise you, your community wants to be heard. They want to have conversations. And I promise you that listening, it leads to better products in the end. So, this second type of communication is the one I want you to focus on the most, and it's incoming. Incoming. I want you to talk less and ask more. I always think about my husband, who used to be a middle school math teacher and has a long time, I think a decade now, been a stay-at-home homeschool dad. And he used to use this in the classroom all the time, and he still uses it all the time with our kids. Do you know what this is? Have you ever seen this thing before? My husband calls him Silent Coyote. His mouth is shut. His ears are attentive. Now, maybe you've heard somebody say God gave you two ears and one mouth for a reason. You should listen twice as much as you talk. And that applies in this scenario as well. I want you to listen to your members more. I want you to ask them, what are their goals? What are their outcomes? What are they experiencing in their art? What challenges are they facing? What do they want to celebrate? I want you to have constant feedback loops. What's a feedback loop? Well, it's a fancy way for saying you're going to survey and ask questions, but you're not just going to survey and let it sit and collect dust on the internet somewhere, collect digital dust. We're actually going to read them and we're going to process them as an individual or as a team. And we're going to make shifts and changes and let people know that we're listening to them. Incoming. Incoming. How are we inviting people to share with us? What does that look like so that we can hear from them? And then finally, we have internal. Internal. And these are the conversations that are happening among our members. All right. Whether this be in person or online. So, online, I'm always thinking about the conversations that are happening. So that's the thing we think about the most. Members are posting, they're getting comments from each other, members are tagging each other in the comments. Maybe they're even forming little chats and private messaging each other. You've got threads about challenges and struggles with their art or wins that they're having. There's all sorts of conversations that are happening. And I promise you, you can learn from those too. But it does take facilitation. We need to intentionally facilitate these kinds of connections if they're not happening inside of our community. But if you're in person, it's the same sort of thing. How are we bringing our members together and getting them to connect and talk with one another? I think about somebody who owns an art gallery, right? And somebody walks in and there's people walking around the art gallery. Am I the kind of art gallery where people are going to walk in knowing nobody else in the room and they're going to leave knowing nobody else in the room? Or am I the type of art gallery where they're going to walk in knowing nobody else in the room and they're going to leave having made a couple friends, a couple people that like the same things that they like and believe the same things that they believe, or at least they have the opportunity to connect with somebody? How am I facilitating that? Am I having live Zoom calls and just talking to people all the time? Or am I facilitating breakout sessions that allow them to connect on a deeper level? What does that look like? How can we facilitate those conversations that are happening among our members as well? The question I want to ask you is, how are you inviting your members to share? And are you listening when they do? If that's all you take away from communication, that's going to be a big win. How are you inviting your community members to share with you their hopes, dreams, feelings, struggles, wins, questions? And then are you listening? I have one for you to just make it really practical. And that's, what's one thing you can ask your community this week? This week. And I want you to hold yourself to it. So take a moment right now. And I want you to think about where you are in your business. If you're in the early stages or the later stages and you're trying to figure out what their struggles are, you're trying to get to know them more, you're trying to celebrate them more, or you're trying to figure out like that perfect product for them. What's one thing you can ask your community this week? Okay, so we have cause, culture, communication, and then our fourth and final pillar is connection. Connection. And some of y'all are like, oh, I thought that's all that community was about, right? Connection. I thought that's what we were going to be talking about the whole time. And I put it last because we so often try to band-aid community problems by throwing connection strategies at it. We just throw spaghetti against the wall with the latest social post strategy or post these kinds of engaging things or try to host this kind of event. It doesn't work. And we end up frustrated because our community is a ghost town or it's crickets and we don't know what else to do. Like we can't get the people to talk and then we get overwhelmed and we get frustrated. We feel like a failure. And then we start to give up. We start to feel burnout and we stop creating. So I want you to understand that so much of what happens in the connection pillar is foundationally built on what happens in all of these other pillars, cause and culture. When we have a strong cause and we're attracting people who are all moving in the same directions towards the same kind of outcome, that's a strong group of people. And then when we narrow it down even more, these people who have these similar beliefs and want to adopt these beliefs and they want to adopt these kind of behaviors. And so not only are we moving in the same direction, but we're starting to act the same and look the same and believe the same, and do the same kind of things and create this culture. People like us do things like this, right? And we're talking to each other. I'm hearing from you and you're hearing from me and you're talking and connecting with each other. This connection piece, it gets so much easier. It's that sense of belonging. That's what we want to create. That's what we're working on here. And that's what happens with the connection piece. But when people come to me to talk about connection, they start in the wrong place. They're asking the wrong questions. And that usually is, where should I put my community platform? I want to start a community. Should it be Facebook? Should it be Circle, Mighty Networks, Membership.io, Heartbeat, whatever? Name your platform. That's always the question I get asked first. And it's an important question, but it's not as important as people think. Because the platform doesn't matter if you don't get all of this other stuff right. The platform doesn't matter if you're not thinking about your community strategically. Now, the space is important, and the space is not just the platform. It's also Zoom calls or in-person events or meetups where you aren't even present, or people walking around a gallery and the feeling of that gallery space, or your art studio or your paint party or your pottery class. That is a space where you're facilitating connection, and you want to be intentional about how that space facilitates connection. And then the second thing I always get asked, well before people need to think about this, is scale. Now, don't get me wrong. I mean, the clients that I work with all have very successful membership and subscription sites, and they're all looking to scale. They've hit a plateau or they're feeling frustrated because their members are leaving just as fast as they get them, and they want help being able to scale to thousands or tens of thousands of members. And in order to do that, you need to be really good at retention and retaining your customers. And so they come to me wanting to scale. But I also have a ton of people who come to me who have 10 members and they're asking me if these strategies scale. How do you scale connection? How do you scale belonging? Because you feel like you have to be the one to facilitate it. But the coolest part about this strategy is that when you do this right, your community facilitates belonging for you. You don't disappear, but your community becomes an extension of you in facilitating that belonging. But before we can do that, there's something that most people are missing that is actually at the root of their connection problem. And it's safety. It's safety. Chances are your community doesn't have a connection problem. It has a safety problem. You have to lead with safety because people will not share if they don't feel seen, if they don't feel safe, if they don't feel supported. They don't share in places that they don't feel safe. And when they stop sharing, they stop showing up. And when they stop showing up, they stop making progress. And when they stop making progress, they leave. They leave. So I could do a whole talk on creating safety. I won't get into all of that, but I will tell you that safety is built on trust. It's built on trust. Do I trust you? Do I trust your team? Do we trust each other as a community? And the easiest way to create trust is to have integrity and authenticity. And those are just fancy words to say you are who you say you are, and you will do what you say you will do. You are who you say you are, and you'll do what you say you will do. And when we go back to this and we look at these things that we've been talking about and we think about this cause and this purpose, and you've waved this flag of this cause and you've said, I'm going to help move you towards this outcome and I'm going to do everything in my power. I mean, yes, you have to show up, but I'm going to move you towards this, or I'm going to create more beauty in your home for you. I'm going to fulfill that piece for you that you told me that you wanted. And then you don't meet the deadline, or you don't do it, or you stop showing up, or you don't release the deliverable when you say you're going to release it. You start breaking trust. When you say that our community upholds these certain beliefs and behaviors and boundaries, and then you don't uphold that, when somebody breaks those boundaries, you don't have a conversation with them. You don't ask them to leave the community. You break trust, right? Who you say you are, you do what you say you will do. When it comes to communication and we're doing surveys and we're asking people what is not working for them, and people are telling you in the surveys that they're having trouble logging in or they're struggling with this certain thing, and you're not showing up to help, you're not letting them know that you hear them, you're breaking trust. So it is so important that you are who you say you are, you do what you say you will do, and you lead. You lead well. Clarity is another really important aspect of safety. And clarity, again, comes from all of these things we've been talking about. Having a clear purpose, a very clear culture with defined boundaries, being really clear in our communication. All of those things promote clarity. But the most important thing is that you lead well. You lead well, because if you don't lead your community, they will find somebody else who will. So as you work to create safety in your community, you might be thinking about creating a space where no question is too beginner, where the people who have been around for a long time, they don't get annoyed by the newbies and all their beginner questions, but they actually feel excited to get to show up and support because they remember. They remember when they were there. You have calls for new members that help them get acclimated easier. You have opportunities for people to get to know each other, whether it's making sure everybody gets introduced and connected with the person next to them or the whole room, whether it's on a live call, creating small breakout sessions in Zoom rooms so that people can connect, whether it's having a guideline and making sure that critiques on anybody's work are opt-in only, essentially. We do whatever we can to make sure that we have a safe environment. And that may mean removing somebody who's tainting the culture. That may mean that you have to show up and lead in a way that says, I'm here for the good of the community of as a whole and not necessarily the individual. I'm here for the good of the community as a whole, not necessarily just the individual. And that is hard. That is so hard, but I promise you, your community will be better off for it. So as you're thinking about these different pillars and especially around connection, and you're like, Shana, that's great. Like, okay, I'm going to create this safe community, but now what? Like, what do I actually need to do to create connection? What are all of the different ways I can do that? I've got you covered. I don't, don't want you to be worried about it. I'm going to give you a guide at the end of this that has over 77 different connection ideas in this guide. Over 77 different connection ideas in person and online. So there's going to be something that's a right fit for your community. And I encourage you, once you've worked on these foundations, to really test and play and figure out what feels good and what gets exciting for your community when it comes to connection opportunities and spaces. I'll share that at the end. And that guide is also filled with some deeper understanding of this whole idea of connection and how to create safety in a community. So I'm going to encourage you to spend some time with a couple of questions. Are you consistent with who you say you are and what you say you will do? And be honest with yourself. If you haven't been with your customers, with your audience, with your community, if you haven't been that consistent person, you really want to ask yourself what you need or want to do to repair that, to start rebuilding that trust. That rope has been frayed. It's not as strong. How are we going to re-strengthen that rope? Do you create a reliable space where your members know what to expect and how to belong? Have you been leading your community well? I really want you to take some time and think about that before you spend a whole lot of time trying to make a fancy community space or scale your community? These are important questions to address. I think many of you are probably doing this well, whether you realize it or not. And you can encourage and give ideas to people around you. What makes your space, your community space, feel safe to show up? And if you don't have a community yet, or you feel like you're really failing in this area, that's okay. You've got a lot of room to grow. I love it. But if you feel like you're nailing this, what makes your space feel so safe to show up? What do you think you're doing that helps people feel safe? That they show up on a call without makeup on and then in their bathrobe. I don't know. That they share their messy first drafts, that they tell people about the things that they're struggling with personally, even though maybe it's a membership around art. What has created that safe environment? And maybe you don't know, and maybe you have just experienced a really safe environment, like your best friend's couch. I always think about that. Like the ultimate safety is like sitting on your best friend's couch for that late night chat. Maybe you've experienced it. What does that feel like to have that kind of safe environment? Or what elements have given you that feeling of safety? All right. So let's go back. Let's go back to all of our pillars here. I'll disappear for just a minute so you can make sure you see it all this community cultivated framework. So we have cause, which is really waving that flag of here's why this community exists. Here's what you're going to be a part of and what you're going to be moving towards. Here's the purpose of this. And I promise I've got a path to help you achieve that purpose and make progress. Or maybe I don't, but we're going to figure it out together, right? And then we have culture. Culture. Who are we? What do we believe? How do we act? We got to make sure that people know, like, either they fit in here or they don't fit in here, or they want to fit in here. Like, there's certain cultures that I maybe don't want to be a part of, and that's okay. That's okay. But we got to get really clear on those beliefs, those behaviors, and those boundaries. And then communication. Stop focusing so much on outgoing. It is valuable and good, but let's start doing more listening than we are talking. And then internal, how are we creating opportunities for conversations among our community members and customers? Friends, sometimes the biggest impact of your community isn't in teaching someone how to paint or how to quilt. It's what that community makes possible for your members and the ripple effect that has in the world. Because like we said before, when people have a feeling of belonging, they show up more fully in the world. So what you're creating, it's not just a business. You're building a movement. You're creating belonging. You're the start of this ripple effect. I promise you, if you want to build a world-changing community that people never want to leave, I want you to remember the 4 C's. Say them with me. Cause, culture, communication, and connection. You need these 4 pillars to create a thriving community. I know I said earlier I was going to share with you over 77 different ways that you can create more connection within your community, whether it's online or offline. And I'm going to give you that right now. It's a super, super simple web address. It's connectionideas.com. Connectionideas.com. When you go there, you're going to have the opportunity to download that guide. And in that guide as well on connectionideas.com, you're also going to get some more strategy around connection and how to create it, because that is so important as you're working through building out your community strategy. And if you have any other questions, or you're just like, hey, Shana, I loved this, I want to connect with you more, or hey, I've got some questions about my community, I have a podcast and a YouTube channel. You can find all of that on my website, shanalyn.com. Find my YouTube and podcast, which is Community Creators there. But really, what I really hope you do, if you did nothing else, what would make me the happiest is if you connected with me on Instagram and sent me a direct message to say hello. Shana Speaks, Shana with one N. I love talking to you about community. I love hearing from you all. And I definitely look forward to connecting with you on Instagram and supporting you as you build your first community or create a more thriving community and work towards that business of your dreams.